The emergency klaxons echoed through the corridors of Admiral Kethvar's flagship as red warning lights bathed everything in an ominous glow. The massive vessel shuddered under the impact of another plasma burst, its shields flickering dangerously low. Through the cracked transparent steel of the bridge viewport, the darkness of space was punctuated by the horrifying sight of the Void Swarm's bioships advancing like a living nightmare. Admiral Kethvar steadied himself against his command chair, his forearms working frantically across multiple control panels. His reptilian features were etched with exhaustion and desperation. For 3 standard months, he had watched the unstoppable enemy devour world after world, consuming entire civilizations as if they were nothing more than appetizers before a feast. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency despite their obvious terror. Lieutenant Zaxmore, his tactical officer, called out damage reports in clipped tones while Communications Officer Velnora tried desperately to maintain contact with the scattered remnants of Coalition forces. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Rigel defensive platform," Zaxmore announced, his insectoid compound eyes reflecting the red glow of the warning lights. "Long-range sensors show nothing. The entire system appears to have been consumed." Kethvar closed his primary eyes and drew a shuddering breath. The Rigel system had been home to nearly 12 billion sentients across 4 worlds. Now it was gone, absorbed into the endless hunger of the Void Swarm. The bioships had stripped away everything organic, leaving behind only bare rock in the cold silence of space. "What about Altair?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. "The fortress worlds went dark 6 hours ago," Velnora replied, her crystalline voice tinkling with barely contained fear. "We received a final transmission from General Haxketh. He said the sky was falling upward." The Admiral's secondary heart skipped a beat. The Altair fortress worlds had been considered impregnable, protected by energy shields that could withstand the combined firepower of entire fleets. If the Void Swarm had breached those defenses, then nowhere in the galaxy was truly safe. Kethvar activated his command console and began composing what might be the Coalition's final desperate plea for help. His clawed fingers trembled slightly as he entered the emergency codes that would broadcast his message across all member worlds simultaneously. "This is Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Defense Coalition to all member worlds," he began, his voice carrying across the quantum communication network to dozens of star systems. "We have lost the Rigel defensive line. The Altair fortress worlds have gone dark. The Void Swarm continues its advance toward the core worlds. All available reinforcements are required at Kepler 442b for what may be our final stand against this threat." The response came quickly, faster than Kethvar had dared hope. The communication board lit up with incoming transmissions from across Coalition space, each member species pledging whatever military assets they could spare. The Zephyrians, with their sleek silver warships and energy-based weapons, committed their remaining 3 battle fleets. "We stand with the Coalition," declared Fleet Admiral Zeptoth. "Our ships are fast and our weapons are precise. We will buy you time." The Veltar, beings of living crystal who had mastered energy manipulation beyond any other known species, offered their most powerful weapon platforms. "Our harmonic disruptors will pierce their bioarmor," promised Crystal Singer Velnuth. "We have never failed to shatter what we choose to break." The insectoid Haxmiri, whose warrior castes lived for battle and knew no concept of retreat, pledged their fiercest champions. "Our soldiers do not fear death," buzzed Hive General Haxketh. "They will hold the line until their last breath." Each transmission brought a mixture of hope and sorrow to Kethvar's hearts. These brave species were committing everything they had left, knowing full well they might be sending their finest to die in a hopeless cause. But what choice did they have? The Void Swarm showed no mercy, took no prisoners, and left nothing but emptiness in its wake. Then came Earth's response, and Admiral Kethvar found himself staring at the communication display in complete bewilderment. "Reinforcements en route. Earth is sending our diplomatic corps." The Admiral read the message 3 times, certain there must be some error in the translation matrix. Diplomats? The galaxy was facing its final hours, and the humans were sending negotiators? Lieutenant Zaxmore approached the command chair, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Sir, perhaps they misunderstood the severity of our situation. These humans are still relatively new to galactic warfare. They joined the Coalition less than 50 standard years ago. Maybe they don't fully comprehend what we're facing." Kethvar considered this possibility. Humanity was indeed young compared to the ancient civilizations that formed the backbone of the Coalition. Their technology was adequate but not exceptional, their military tactics straightforward but unremarkable. They had contributed valuable industrial capacity and raw materials to the war effort, but they had never been considered a major military power. Should we send them a clarification? Asked Communications Officer Valnoro. Explain that we need soldiers, not diplomats. The Admiral raised one of his four hands for silence, a gesture that immediately quieted the bridge crew. Despite his confusion, something about Earth's response intrigued him. Throughout their brief membership in the coalition, humans had consistently surprised their alien allies with unconventional solutions to seemingly impossible problems. Where other species saw obstacles, humans often found opportunities. Where others sought to fight, humans sometimes found ways to avoid conflict entirely. Perhaps there was more to this than appeared on the surface. Through the viewport, the bioships of the Void Swarm continued their relentless advance, their organic hulls pulsing with malevolent life. Whatever humanity was planning, they would need to act quickly. Time was running out for the coalition, for the galaxy, and for every living being in their path. Admiral Kethvar could only hope that humanity knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. The massive orbital station above Kepler 442b buzzed with frantic activity as ships from across the galaxy arrived for what everyone believed would be the final battle. Admiral Kethvar watched from the command center's observation deck as sleek Zephyrian warships took defensive positions alongside the crystalline weapon platforms of the Veltar and the heavily armored battle cruisers of the Haxmiri. Each arriving vessel was a testament to its species' military might. The Zephyrian ships gleamed like silver daggers, bristling with energy weapons that could slice through asteroids. The Veltar platforms hummed with harmonic frequencies that made nearby bulkheads vibrate, their crystal matrices storing enough power to level mountains. The Haxmiri cruisers looked like floating fortresses, their hulls covered in weapon turrets and launch bays for fighter swarms. Then Earth's contribution arrived, and the entire command center fell silent. A single transport ship drifted toward the docking bay with no escort, no fanfare, and no visible weapons. The vessel was plain gray metal, unmarked except for small identification codes. It looked more like a civilian cargo hauler than a military asset. Coalition scanning officers ran their instruments over the ship multiple times, certain their equipment must be malfunctioning. Scanning Officer Zep Lisa reporting, announced a Zephyrian technician, her voice filled with confusion. The human vessel shows 4 to 7 life signs aboard. No detectable weapons systems, no military-grade shielding, no combat armor signatures. Sir, this appears to be an unarmed transport carrying civilians. Admiral Kethvar felt his secondary heart sink. Had Earth truly misunderstood the situation so completely? Did they think this was some kind of diplomatic conference rather than humanity's last stand against extinction? Perhaps their weapons are concealed using technology we cannot detect, suggested Lieutenant Zaxmore hopefully. Human engineering can be unconventional. The Admiral wanted to believe this, but deep down he feared the worst. As the transport ship settled into the docking bay, he could only watch and hope that humanity had some plan that made sense. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and the humans began to emerge. Admiral Kethvar had seen human soldiers before during joint training exercises. They typically wore combat armor, carried advanced rifles, and moved with the purposeful stride of warriors ready for battle. These humans were nothing like that. They wore simple dark blue uniforms that looked more suited for office work than warfare. No armor protected their fragile organic bodies. No weapons hung from their belts. They carried only small tablets and basic communication devices that any civilian might use for daily business. They walked calmly through the docking bay as if they were arriving for a business meeting rather than the galaxy's final battle. Their leader was a woman who appeared to be in her middle years by human standards. She was neither particularly tall nor imposing, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical style. She approached the Coalition Reception Committee with measured steps, showing no sign of fear or urgency despite the desperate situation. "I am Commander Kim Nari of the Earth Diplomatic Corps," she announced in accented but clear galactic standard. "We understand you requested reinforcements." Admiral Kethvar stared at her in disbelief. This small, unarmored woman was leading Earth's contribution to the most important battle in galactic history? Behind her, the other humans arranged themselves in a loose formation that looked more like a tour group than a military unit. "Commander Kim," the Admiral began carefully, trying to keep the frustration out of his voice, "I believe there may have been some miscommunication. We are facing the Void Swarm, an enemy force that has consumed entire star systems. We need soldiers, weapons, warships. With respect, we need warriors, not." He gestured helplessly at her tablet and communication headset. "Diplomats," Commander Kim finished with a gentle smile. "Admiral, Earth has sent exactly what you requested. You asked for our most dangerous assets. These are humanity's most dangerous weapons." Several coalition officers exchanged glances of bewilderment. Lieutenant Zaxmore's mandibles clicked nervously as he looked over the group of apparent bureaucrats. Communications Officer Velnora's crystalline form chimed with harmonic frequencies that indicated extreme confusion. "Commander," Admiral Kethvar said slowly, "the Void Swarm does not negotiate. They have never communicated with any species. They consume everything in their path without mercy or hesitation. How exactly do you propose to fight them with conversation?" Another human stepped forward, a younger man named Park Jin who wore the same calm expression as his commander. "Admiral, has anyone ever actually tried talking to them? Really talking to them, not just sending standard first contact protocols or surrender demands?" "Of course we have tried." The Admiral's voice rose despite his efforts to remain diplomatic. "Every species in the coalition has attempted communication. We have broadcast on every known frequency, used mathematical concepts, sent cultural artifacts, even tried music and art. They ignore everything and continue their advance." Commander Kim nodded thoughtfully. "You have tried communicating with them using methods that work for your species. But has anyone tried understanding what they might need to hear? What they might be feeling?" "Feeling?" Lieutenant Zaxmore's compound eyes focused on the human commander. "Admiral, the Void Swarm shows no individual consciousness, no emotional responses, no responses to the type of communication most species use," interrupted another human team member. "But that doesn't mean they cannot feel or think. It might just mean they feel and think differently than you do." Through the command center's massive viewport, the dark shapes of Void Swarm bioships could be seen gathering at the edge of the star system like storm clouds on the horizon. Time was running out, and Earth's great contribution appeared to be a handful of middle-aged humans with clipboards and communication headsets. Admiral Kethvar closed his primary eyes and tried to find patience. Either humanity had completely lost their minds, or they knew something that the rest of the galaxy had missed entirely. Given that the conventional approach had failed so completely, perhaps it was time to try something unconventional. Even if it seemed impossible. The darkness of space suddenly erupted into a horror show as the Void Swarm materialized from hyperspace. Their bioships were unlike anything in the known galaxy, massive organic structures that looked more like living creatures than spacecraft. Each vessel was the size of a small city, its surface covered in what appeared to be pulsing tissue that moved and breathed as if alive. Admiral Kethvar gripped his command chair as the sensors registered the enemy fleet. Thousands of bioships arranged themselves in perfect formation, moving with a coordination that no normal fleet could achieve. They flowed through space like a single massive organism, each ship responding instantly to the collective will of the hive mind that controlled them. "All stations, battle alert," the Admiral commanded, his voice echoing through the command center. "Raise shields to maximum power. Charge all weapon systems. This is what we have been preparing for." Across the coalition fleet, warships responded to the call. Zephyrian energy cannons began to glow with deadly light. Veltar crystal platforms hummed as they stored power for their harmonic disruptors. Haxmiri battle cruisers launched swarms of fighters that formed defensive screens around the larger vessels. The tension in the command center was thick enough to cut. Officers from a dozen different species worked frantically at their stations, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether their civilizations would survive or be consumed like so many others before them. In the middle of this frantic activity, Commander Kim Nari stood calmly at a communication console, her fingers dancing over controls that most coalition officers did not even recognize. Her team of humans had spread out across the command center, each one taking position at different monitoring stations. "Admiral," Commander Kim said in her quiet, steady voice, "we would like to request permission to initiate first contact protocols." The command center fell silent for a moment. Every officer turned to stare at the human commander as if she had just suggested they surrender immediately. Admiral Kethvar felt his foreheart skip beats. "First contact," he repeated, his voice climbing higher with disbelief. "Commander, that is not an unknown species out there waiting to shake hands and exchange gifts. That is the Void Swarm. They do not communicate with anyone. They devour everything they encounter." Lieutenant Zaxmore stepped closer to the human commander, his compound eyes reflecting his confusion. "Commander Kim, with all respect to your species, we have battle-tested protocols for dealing with the swarm. Every engagement has taught us the same lesson: they cannot be reasoned with, cannot be negotiated with, cannot be stopped except through overwhelming force." Park Jin, one of the younger humans on Commander Kim's team, looked up from his station with the same unnaturally calm expression that all the humans seemed to wear. "Lieutenant, has anyone ever actually tried speaking with them?" Really speaking with them, not just broadcasting surrender demands or mathematical formulas. Of course we have tried everything. Admiral Kethvar's voice boomed across the command center. Do you think we are fools? Every species in the coalition has attempted communication. The Zephyrians sent complex mathematical sequences. The Veltar broadcast harmonic frequencies that can communicate with crystalline life forms. The Haxmiri transmitted their most sacred war chants. We have tried every known form of interspecies communication protocol. Commander Kim nodded thoughtfully, never taking her eyes off her console. You have tried communicating with them using methods that work between your species. But Admiral, has anyone ever considered that they might need a completely different approach? Something none of your species would naturally think to try. What could humans possibly know about communication that the rest of the galaxy has missed? Demanded Communications Officer Velnora, her crystalline voice ringing with skepticism. With respect, Admiral, Commander Kim said, turning to face the coalition leadership, you have tried communicating with them using logic, mathematics, and formal protocols. You have approached them as military commanders speaking to other military forces. But what if they are not military forces at all? What if they are something else entirely? Before Admiral Kethvar could protest further, Commander Kim activated the communication array. But instead of using the standard military frequencies or diplomatic channels that every other species employed, she began adjusting controls that most coalition officers had never seen touched. What are those frequencies? Asked Lieutenant Zaxmore, peering at readings that made no sense to his training. Emotional resonance bands, replied another human team member named Lee Hanna. Most species consider them background noise, but humans use them instinctively. They are the frequencies we use when we are trying to comfort someone who is frightened or in pain. Commander Kim placed her communication headset carefully over her ears and leaned toward the microphone. When she spoke, her voice carried a warmth and gentleness that seemed completely out of place in the middle of a war zone. This is Commander Kim Nari of Earth to the entities approaching this system, she said softly, as if she were speaking to a scared child rather than the galaxy's most feared enemy. We can see that you are hungry. We can see that you are afraid. We know that you have been alone for a very long time. We would like to help you. The command center fell absolutely silent. Every officer, regardless of species, stared at the human commander as if she had just performed magic. On the main tactical display, something impossible happened. The Void Swarm's advanced formations, which had been moving toward the coalition fleet with unstoppable momentum, began to slow down. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Void Swarm had responded to communication. The command center had become eerily quiet as the hours passed. Admiral Kethvar found himself pacing nervously between stations, watching his officers work with a mixture of hope and disbelief. The massive bioships of the Void Swarm hung motionless in space, neither advancing nor retreating, like predators suddenly unsure of their prey. Commander Kim Nari sat at her communication station, her headset pressed against her ears as she spoke in gentle, measured tones. Her team had spread throughout the command center, each human monitoring different aspects of the unprecedented conversation taking place. They worked with the same calm focus they might bring to any difficult negotiation, showing no sign of the fear that gripped every other being on the station. Status report, Admiral Kethvar requested for the 5th time in an hour. Lieutenant Park Jin looked up from his monitoring station, his young face serious but hopeful. Contact remains stable, Admiral. We are maintaining communication on 17 different frequency bands. The response patterns are becoming more complex and organized. More organized? The Admiral's reptilian features creased with confusion. What does that mean exactly? Before Park Jin could answer, Communications Officer Velnoro called out from her station. Sir, we are intercepting partial transmissions from the communication exchange. The listening posts are picking up fragments of the conversation. Put it through the main speakers, ordered the Admiral. The command center filled with the sound of Commander Kim's voice, warm and reassuring as she spoke to the entity that had terrorized the galaxy. We understand that your young ones are starving. No parent should have to watch their children suffer from hunger. We have seen worlds in our galaxy that are rich with the energy you need, places where you can feed without taking life from others. Then came another voice, strange and layered as if multiple beings were speaking at once, but carrying an unmistakable tone of pain and exhaustion. So long since others showed kindness. We never meant harm to thinking beings. We only sought survival for our offspring. The dark spaces between galaxies offer no sustenance. We can show you planets that burn with stellar radiation, worlds with no life to disturb. Your children can grow strong without causing suffering to others. Admiral Kethvar felt his secondary hearts flutter. The Void Swarm was actually communicating, actually explaining their actions. For decades, the Coalition had assumed they were dealing with mindless destroyers. Now it seemed they had been facing desperate refugees all along. Chief Science Officer Velnoth approached the Admiral's position, her crystalline form chiming softly with harmonic frequencies that indicated deep confusion. She had studied the Void Swarm longer than any other being in the Coalition, analyzing their biosignatures and behavioral patterns through countless encounters. "This should not be possible, Admiral," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species. "Our analysis of their biosignatures has shown no capacity for individual thought patterns. They display no emotional responses to stimuli, no variation in neural activity that would suggest complex reasoning. They behave like a simple hive mind focused only on consumption." Lieutenant Park Minute, one of the younger members of Commander Kim's diplomatic team, had been listening to their conversation. He approached with the respectful manner that all humans seem to show toward other species, but his words carried quiet confidence. "Officer Velnoth, you found no responses to the types of communication that your species and others in the Coalition use naturally. But humans evolved differently than most galactic species. We developed as pack hunters and social creatures who needed to survive by working together in complex groups." The crystalline being's harmonic frequencies shifted to indicate interest. "Explain this difference, if you would." Park Minute gestured toward Commander Kim, who was still deep in conversation with the swarm. "We learned to understand not just what others were thinking, but what they were feeling. Human survival depended on reading emotions, understanding needs that were not spoken aloud, recognizing fear and pain and hope in others. We learned to read between the words and find meaning in what was not said directly." Through the massive observation port, something extraordinary was taking place. The bioships of the Void Swarm were slowly changing their formation. The aggressive attack pattern that had struck fear into the hearts of countless civilizations was dissolving, replaced by something that looked almost like curiosity. The massive organic vessels moved with deliberate care, as if they were trying not to appear threatening. Admiral Kethvar watched in amazement as ships the size of cities repositioned themselves into a loose circle around the Coalition fleet. It was not a trap or an encirclement, but rather the formation that young creatures might take when approaching something new and interesting. Commander Kim Nari finally removed her communication headset and turned to face the assembled Coalition leadership. Her face showed the exhaustion of 3 hours of intense concentration, but her eyes held something that had been missing from the command center for months: genuine hope. "Admiral, officers of the Coalition," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the silent command center. "I need to tell you something that will change everything we thought we knew about this conflict." She paused, looking around at the representatives of dozens of species who had been fighting desperately for their survival. "The Void Swarm is not evil. They are not destroyers or conquerors. They are refugees fleeing from a dying galaxy, trying desperately to keep their children alive in a universe that they believed held only enemies." Admiral Kethvar's 4 arms gestured in disbelief. "But their behavior, their consumption of entire worlds, their refusal to communicate." Commander Kim held up a gentle hand. "Those are the actions of desperately frightened parents trying to feed their starving children. Their home galaxy is being consumed by expanding dark matter. They have been fleeing from system to system for generations, taking whatever they could find to survive. They attack because they have been alone for so long that they forgot others might choose to help rather than hurt them." She turned back to look at the bioships through the viewport. They just needed someone to listen with empathy instead of fear. Someone to ask what they needed rather than simply trying to destroy them. On the tactical display, the Void Swarm's bioships completed their withdrawal from attack positions. But significantly, they did not leave the system. Instead, they waited, as if hoping for something they had not experienced in countless years. They waited for friendship. The morning shift change at Kepler Station had become something that Admiral Kethvar looked forward to with wonder rather than duty. As he walked onto the observation deck with his ceremonial cup of Zephyrian tea, he stopped to marvel at a sight that would have been impossible to imagine just 6 months earlier. Through the massive transparisteel windows, bioships of the former Void Swarm worked peacefully alongside Coalition vessels in the glow of the dying star. The organic ships, which had once struck terror into the hearts of every sentient being in the galaxy, now moved with gentle purpose as they harvested stellar energy that no conventional technology could safely collect. The bioships had changed since the peace began. Their surfaces, once dark and menacing, now pulsed with soft bioluminescent patterns that the humans had learned was their equivalent of singing. The swarm entities had explained that they had suppressed these light patterns during their desperate flight across the void, believing that any sign of beauty or joy would make them appear weak to potential enemies. Admiral HFY watched as a massive bioharvester, easily the size of a small moon, extended delicate organic tendrils toward the star's corona. The ship's living hull absorbed deadly radiation that would have instantly vaporized any coalition vessel, processing it through biological systems that converted the raw energy into a form that could nourish their young. Nearby, a Zephyrian research vessel worked alongside a smaller bioship to study the energy conversion process. The cooperation between the two ships would have been unthinkable just months ago, but now it represented the new reality of galactic civilization. The morning harvest is proceeding smoothly, reported Lieutenant Zaxmore, approaching with his daily status report. The bioships have collected enough energy to feed their population for another 3 standard days, and they have shared 17 new bioengineering techniques with our research teams. The Admiral nodded approvingly. The exchange of knowledge had been even more valuable than the end of hostilities. The swarm's mastery of biological sciences had revolutionized medicine across coalition space. Diseases that had plagued entire species for millennia were being cured with treatments derived from bioship organisms. Agricultural techniques shared by the swarm had increased food production on dozens of worlds, ending famines that had seemed hopeless. Any word from the Rigel system? The Admiral asked. The terraforming project is ahead of schedule, Zaxmore replied with obvious satisfaction. The bioships have successfully converted 3 barren worlds into energy-rich environments suitable for swarm habitation. No existing ecosystems were disturbed in the process. This had been the breakthrough that made everything possible. The swarm entities fed on stellar radiation and cosmic energy, not on organic life as everyone had assumed. Their consumption of living worlds during their desperate flight had been a tragic necessity, not a preference. Given access to uninhabited systems with the right stellar conditions, they could thrive without affecting any other form of life. Commander Kim Nari appeared in the observation deck doorway, carrying a data tablet and wearing the same calm expression that had somehow saved the galaxy. She approached Admiral HFY with the measured steps that had become familiar to every being on the station. "Admiral," she said in her gentle voice, "I wanted to inform you that I have received new assignment orders from Earth Command." The Admiral felt a flutter of concern in his secondary hearts. Commander Kim and her diplomatic team had become essential to the new galactic order. The thought of losing their unique abilities worried him more than he cared to admit. "The Andromeda contact," Kim Nari continued, holding up her data tablet. "Long-range sensors have detected what appears to be an ancient machine intelligence in the neighboring galaxy. It has been consuming entire sectors, destroying everything in its path for the past several thousand years. The Coalition Council has requested that humanity's diplomatic corps investigate." Admiral HFY's mandibles clicked in what humans had learned to recognize as his species' version of nervous laughter. "Commander, a year ago I would have called such a mission complete suicide. The idea of trying to negotiate with a machine intelligence that has been destroying civilizations for millennia." He gestured toward the peaceful scene outside the viewport. "But now I have seen what humans can accomplish when they refuse to accept that someone cannot be helped." Kim Nari smiled, the same warm expression she had worn during those first terrifying hours when she spoke to the Void Swarm. "Colonel Lee Hanna is already assembling her team for the mission. She has an interesting theory about the situation." "Which is?" "She believes that if something is intelligent enough to make choices about what to destroy and what to spare, then it must be intelligent enough to experience loneliness. And if it has been alone for thousands of years, destroying everything it encounters, then it might be the loneliest entity in the universe." The Admiral considered this perspective. Before meeting humans, such reasoning would have seemed naive to the point of foolishness. Now he understood that what other species called naive, humans called hopeful. And hope, he had learned, was far more powerful than weapons. Through the observation deck windows, the transport ship Understanding could be seen preparing for departure. The vessel looked almost identical to the simple transport that had brought Commander Kim's team to Kepler Station 6 months earlier. No weapons, no armor, no advanced technology beyond basic life support and communication systems. But aboard that unremarkable ship would be humanity's most dangerous weapon, their relentless, irrational, beautifully stubborn refusal to believe that anyone was truly beyond saving. "Safe travels, Commander," Admiral HFY said. "And may your words reach across the void to another lost soul who simply needs someone to listen." As the Understanding disappeared into hyperspace, carrying hope to another galaxy, the Admiral returned his attention to the impossible cooperation taking place around the dying star. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could deploy was not a weapon at all, but someone who refused to give up on anyone. Even machine gods needed friends.